This Day in Sports History. This episode is brought to you by Sterling Soap Company. Fellas, you've heard the phrase, look good, feel good, right? But why not add smell good to that too? That's where Sterling Soap Company comes in. First, Sterling Soap is 100% natural and has a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne. Second, there's a scent just for you. How about burgundy? Yeah, it's more than a color. The Sterling Soap folks blend natural essential oils with hints of mahogany, golden amber, and sandalwood. Or how about D503, an intensely masculine scent inspired by Legend by Mont Blanc. And third, you will feel good about the price. For just a little more than you'd pay at the grocery store, Sterling Soap will leave you feeling clean, refreshed, and ready for whatever's next. Give Sterling Soap a try today. Visit sterlingsoap.com. This dish is a member of the Sports History Network. Check out sportshistorynetwork.com for more podcast suggestions and more info. It's November 6th, and on this day in 1993, Evander Holyfield reclaimed the heavyweight title, but the fight itself wasn't nearly as interesting as what happened during it. This was Holyfield versus Riddick-Bowe, the repeat or revenge fight outside at Las Vegas's Caesars Palace. Bowe had beaten Holyfield by unanimous decision 12 months earlier to win the heavyweight title. The 10th round of that fight is considered one of the best of all time, and Ring Magazine called it the round of the year. Bowe had defended his title in February, but apparently had gotten a little out of shape between that defense and this fight. He came in 11 pounds heavier than he'd been for his first fight with Evander, but he was still undefeated at 34-0. The only blemish on Holyfield's record in his 30 fights had been the loss to Bowe in '92. Bowe looked good from the opening bell, and he won the first 4 rounds. Holyfield came back to win the next 2, but it's the thing that happened in the 7th round that everybody remembers about this fight. 2 minutes into the 7th, James Miller, who became known later as Fan Man, crashed into the ring ropes in his parachute, fan, and motorized contraption thingy. Here's Jim Lampley, who was calling the fight that night for HBO.
And somebody in a parachute has just landed on the edge of the ring, has been pulled away by security guards. The fight has been brought to a halt. There's a massive melee at ringside as this fellow with a motorized parachute has landed right on top of spectators and officials at ringside. He's in the midst of a mass of security guards now. Rock Newman, Riddick-Bowe's manager, was right there. This is a monumental disaster. Right now, police are filing by me at ringside and grabbing this gentleman who has created a monstrosity of an interruption in the bout. His parachute has caught itself up on a row of ring lights.
Miller had been circling the ring for about 10 minutes prior to his crash, and once he did crash into the ropes, he was punched by ringside spectators and security to the point that he was knocked unconscious. He was taken out on a stretcher. The fight was delayed about 20 minutes to remove him and his gear from the lights that he had gotten entangled with. He was arrested later on a dangerous flying charge. Months later, Miller said that his flying machine suffered mechanical problems and it was not his intention to crash the party. Once the fight was restarted, Holyfield kept up his aggression and landed some hard punches to Bowe's face. Big Daddy tried to regain control in the fight, but he came up a little bit short. It went to the judges, with 2 giving the fight to Holyfield and the other calling it a draw for a majority decision for the real deal Holyfield. He became only the 3rd fighter to regain the heavyweight title after losing it. These 2 would fight a 3rd time the following November, with Bowe winning the rubber match by TKO. On this day in 1869, it was the first college football game ever played. Sort of. What do you mean, Steve? How could it be sort of the first college football game? It either was or it wasn't. Yeah, well, here's the deal. Were there colleges involved? Yes, Rutgers and New Jersey, which would later be known as Princeton, were playing. Were people out on a field with a ball with the idea of going down to one end and scoring? Yes. Now, did it look anything like the game that we have today? Not so much, and that's why I say sorta. Football historians call this the first collegiate football game, but if you got into your little time machine and went back to this day and you walked up on this event, you would say, that ain't football. This took place in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Each team had 25 players on the field, and there were about double there to watch this melee. The object was to kick the ball into the opposing team's goal. I couldn't find anything talking about the ball in particular. It could have been a soccer ball. I've read some things that said it was a soccer ball, or it could have been like an actual pig's bladder, which would give it an oblong shape, and that's the kind of ball that they were using for rugby at that time. So, along with their feet, players could use their hands, their head, or their body to advance the ball. Now, there was no carrying the ball or throwing of the ball. Each goal counted a single point, and then there was a reset. Again, assuming here, but a reset back to midfield where another so-called quote-unquote game started. Each goal ended one game and then started the next. So 10 such games were played on this day, with Rutgers winning 6-4. They had so much fun on this day that they decided to do it again the following week, with New Jersey winning 8-0 in that one. So this put in motion the game that would eventually evolve into what we know today as football. On this day in 1995, Cleveland Browns owner Art Modell stunned the city of Cleveland, his players, and his coaches when he announced he had reached an agreement with the city of Baltimore to move the Browns after the season ended and begin playing in Charm City, USA the next season. There was so much hope at the start of the 95 season for the city of Cleveland and the franchise. Under head coach Bill Belichick, the Browns had gone 11-5 and had won a playoff game in 94. It was only expected to be even better here in 95. Heck, people were even talking about a Super Bowl. Well, midway through the season, things were not going as well as planned. A 37-10 loss to the Houston Oilers on November 5th was Cleveland's fifth loss in the first 9 weeks. Now, there are a lot of moving parts to this story, but to kind of bring it down to the basics, it was all about Municipal Stadium. In 1975, Modell signed a 25-year lease with the city of Cleveland, and he paid the city about $150,000 annually to rent it. He also paid for any capital improvements on the facility. He turned a profit on tickets, suites, licensing, food and beverage, and other things. Now, what he did not do is share the revenue from corporate suites with the Cleveland Indians, who also played at Municipal Stadium. Now, that was a nice chunk of his profit. In 1990, the city announced the project to build what would become Jacobs Field, and Modell was initially cool with it. But what he failed to consider was all that revenue that baseball had generated for him at Municipal Stadium. So once the Indians relocated to Jacobs Field at the start of the 94 season, his revenue dropped considerably. Couple that with rising player salaries and other things, and Modell was in a sinking ship, and he started looking for the lifeboats. That lifeboat came in the form of Maryland's Stadium Authority. Now, there was a sin tax on the ballot in Cleveland set for November 7th that, if passed, would fund a new stadium for the Browns in Cleveland. Now, Modell had zero faith that it would pass. Baltimore had been without an NFL team after the Colts had left in '83, and of course they were wanting back into the league. But in order to get the city to build a new stadium, they needed to lure a team first. And they first approached Cincinnati, but after the Bengals were promised a new stadium, they decided to stay put. Maryland officials began secret talks and negotiations through the early part of the 95 season, and they offered Modell the rights to a new $220 million stadium, but he would need to act quickly. And so on Monday, November 6th, 1995, Modell held a press conference at Baltimore's Camden Yards announcing he was moving the team to Baltimore to begin playing the next season. The following day, the sin tax vote in Cleveland passed overwhelmingly. The Browns went in the tank the remainder of the season, losing 6 of their last 7 games to finish the year 5-11. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. On this day in 1974, Los Angeles Dodger Mike Marshall won the Cy Young Award. Marshall was a workhorse relief pitcher in '74 and became the first reliever to win the award, given to the best pitcher in each league. Marshall was not a warm and fuzzy guy who opened up to the media. Instead, he was rather unpopular and surly with sports journalists, which makes his winning the Cy Young even more impressive, since the Baseball Writers of America are the ones who vote on it. And if you don't believe likability plays into postseason awards, see Ted Williams not winning the AL MVP in 1942 when he won the Triple Crown. Marshall made appearances in 106 games and he pitched 208 1/3 innings, setting the Major League Baseball record for a reliever in both of those categories. Now, both of those records are still intact. During one stretch in June and July, Marshall came on in relief in 14 straight games. He finished the season with 15 wins and 21 saves. And to showcase how different relievers are used now from 50 years ago, Marshall's 21 saves led the National League. This year, St. Louis's Ryan Helsley led the way with 49 saves in just 65 appearances. And on this day in 2001, amateur golfer Fergus Muir hit the longest witnessed putt. This feat is documented in the Guinness Book of World Records and was witnessed by Muir's playing partners that day. Muir and his companions were playing St. Andrew's Eden course, and when they stepped onto the tee at the 125-yard par 3 fifth hole, a strong prevailing wind from behind was blowing. Muir watched as each of his friends' tee shots sailed over the green, and no club choice seemed right. A lofted wedge put the ball in the air, the wind took it well past the target. A long iron was just too much club for the short par 3. So, Muir pulled out his putter and gave it a generous whack. No word on whether he plumb-bopped it or not, but the ball went the full 375 feet, dropped into the hole for an ace, earning the distinction of the longest putt ever made. And it's time now for today's Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. In the movie The Hateful Eight, Kurt Russell's character breaks a guitar in a scene that was supposed to be a prop guitar. Instead, it was a 140-year-old antique guitar on loan from a museum. That museum no longer loans out any of its items as movie props. That's all I've got for you today, and of course I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.